Thank you, Brian. Tehran and the U.S. trading blows now. Iran's downing of an American helicopter prompting a fiery U.S. response as the president gives a new update on the state of negotiations. This is a quickly developing story as we come to air in New York City. Here we go now. I'm Bill Hemmering. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. As you said, it's fast breaking. So CENTCOM says it took out 20 Iranian targets, including radar sites all around the Strait of Hormuz. This after an Iranian drone downed a U.S. Apache helicopter off the coast of Oman. Both American crew members are safe, and we'll have much more on that in a moment.
So that fighting, just the latest blow to the ceasefire. President Trump signaling he's fed up, telling Fox News earlier today that he may hit Iran even harder, targeting that country's power plants and possibly its bridges.
And the president writes on True Social, quote, Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead. They've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price. So Trey Yingst with the latest from Tel Aviv. He spoke with the president just a short time ago. What else did he tell you, Trey?
Yeah, Bill, Dana, good morning. Overnight, the United States launched a series of airstrikes against Iranian targets along the coast. The Iranians responded with missile fire toward U.S. forces. And I spoke with President Trump earlier. He told me he may keep going and is even getting closer to targeting Iranian power plants and bridges because President Trump says the Iranians are tapping the U.S. along at the negotiating table. This is a significant development and a change in thinking here because the president says they had a chance to sign a deal and survive, and ultimately, this week, they shot down a U.S. Apache helicopter with a drone. The president giving Fox News some new details on that incident off the coast of Oman. President Trump says the drone lodged in between the two crew members in this Apache helicopter, and it was on fire, but it didn't explode. The president says there was a lot of heat there in the cockpit. Ultimately, the pilot was able to bring this helicopter down into the sea, and these two crew members were actually rescued by a sea drone. For the first time in U.S. military history, President Trump called this a miracle. We are getting response from the Iranians this hour as it relates to the U.S. strikes that took place overnight and the exchange of fire. Here is what the spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry had to say.
We need to examine this properly. Look, diplomacy and the battlefields are not separate from each other. They are part of the same continuum, two parallel tools used to safeguard Iran's national interests and national security. Wherever necessary, our armed forces respond to the enemy with strength and power.
In those strikes overnight, U.S. forces targeted Iranian radar sites and air defense systems that President Trump says the Iranians had tried to rebuild during this ceasefire. Again, though, the latest information that we have from the president, he says he may continue striking the Iranians and that he is getting closer to targeting Iranian power plants and bridges as the Iranians tap the U.S. along at the negotiating table. Bill, Dana?
All right, Trey Yingst, thank you.
So let's recap with a series of maps to explain at home what we believe transpired over the last, 36 hours or so. Remember what the Iranians want. They want the international shipping lane to run between these small islands off the coast of Iran. Currently, it goes this way over the coast of Oman, and that's the internationally recognized waters. All right, that is a backdrop. Here is what happened overnight with the U.S. responding. Keshem Island has been hit. Bandar Abbas, a big port city, and two other lesser-known port cities were hit as well on the Iranian coast. So that's where we stand at the moment in response to what happened with that Apache helicopter. What did the Iranians do last night? They apparently targeted 3 different areas in the Middle East, and as Trey will tell you, these countries are essentially on the front lines of the current war. There were missiles fired at Bahrain, host of the Fifth Fleet by the U.S. Navy, missiles fired at Kuwait, and missiles fired at an airbase that the U.S. operates out of Jordan, where a lot of the F-35s fly from. We do not have bomb damage assessments from these 3, but based on the information we're getting so far, some of these missiles were knocked from the sky, and there may not have been any damage on the ground, so stand by for more on that. Now to what happened over here on the board. This Apache helicopter was off the coast of Oman about 36 hours ago, patrolling this area at sunset when it was hit by this Iranian drone. 2 pilots are in the water for a period of 2 hours, so it's dark now off the coast of Oman in the Arabian Sea. What does the U.S. military do? For the first time now, they send this U.S. Navy Corsair which is a drone-operated boat. It's 24 feet long. It was developed by Saronic Technology starting in 2021. So this is very new technology. 1,000 miles nautical range, can carry about 1,000-pound capacity, which is an easy thing to do when you're looking for two pilots in the water. Tough thing to locate, but easy to pick them out of the water and then take them to safety, because essentially you're not putting any more U.S. men in danger in the area. This is how it runs on the video that was filed with us and some of the areas that it was practiced on for this boat. Again, it's autonomous. It's the future of warfare. The Ukrainians have used it to a degree fighting the Russian Navy fleet, but this is the first time for the U.S. military. Retired Vice Admiral John Fozzie Miller now. And sir, thank you for your time and welcome to our coverage. So we wonder, in this big sphere now of the theater, what's next? We are waiting for a response from Iran, and you say that's the wrong mindset. Explain.
Oh, good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me. What needs to happen is the United States needs to take control of the escalation ladder. And if you look at what's just transpired over the last 24 hours, the Iranians shoot down an Apache helicopter. We respond to this Iranian aggression. We respond in a very measured, non-escalatory way to make sure that it doesn't impact the ceasefire. And then we wait for the Iranian response, which we got, and that was missiles into Kuwait, into Bahrain, and into Jordan. So suddenly, the Iranians are controlling the escalation ladder. Mm-hmm. That's not how we're going to win a negotiation. We need to have control of that escalation ladder. The Iranian regime needs to understand if they conduct any kinetic strikes anywhere in the Gulf, that is a broach of the ceasefire, and they'll pay a serious consequence for that. So there needs to be a cost imposition that they're currently not feeling.
The Iranian foreign minister posted this on X, saying that despite its defeats on the battlefield, which is curious. Anyway, he says the U.S. opted to test our determination. Our powerful armed forces will leave no attack or threat unanswered. Leave our region if you want to be safe. History of the Persian Gulf has many chapters on dire fates of intruding outsiders. They are counting on history, I guess, and they're also trying to explain to their population and maybe even their Gulf allies who will believe them that they have the upper hand. It was just reported that apparently the Qataris have sent negotiators and they feel positive about the next step. How much stock would you put in that?
Well, we've been hearing for the entire length of the ceasefire, Dana, that peace is at hand, that the Iranians are desperate to make a deal. A deal's coming at any moment. The Iranians are desperate to stay in power, and that's never going to change. So if we want that to change, there needs to be constant pressure on them. That's military pressure, diplomatic pressure, economic pressure. Anytime we ease off on any of that, the Iranians are going to see it as a victory, they're going to see it as an opening, and this conflict is going to continue on and on.
Sir, what I hear from you and others is that unless we go back to significant military strikes, we're not going to move the ball here. Do you think the commander-in-chief has shown a willingness to do that?
Well, the president's been extraordinarily patient thus far, maybe more patient than many of the rest of us would be or think that maybe he should be. So in his Truth Social post this morning, he indicated that the Iranians had missed their opportunity and that they should stand by. I don't know that we need to go back to 400 or 500 strikes a day, but certainly we need an active military effort that's aimed at getting the strait open. So when we talk about bombing radar sites and other infrastructure that's in place in the Strait of Hormuz, all of that should be gone. The regime's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz needs to be shut down, and we need to put that pressure on them. Eventually, we may need to put more pressure on them, and that includes lines of communication. How are they communicating from Tehran down to the Strait? How are they moving weapons around the country? Whether that's interdicting roads or bridges, that remains to be seen. But all of those things need to be on the table, and the regime needs to understand they are, in fact, on the table.
Fozzie, can you tell us from your perspective about this remarkable technological achievement that an unmanned vessel was able to rescue our two helicopter pilots and bring them to safety? I mean, that seems pretty remarkable and advanced, and perhaps a sign of things to come in the military.
Dana, the United States has been experimenting with unmanned craft, aircraft, surface craft, subsurface craft, particularly in the Gulf region for several years now. And that technology is beginning to mature, and we just saw the kinds of things you can do with that. But imagine instead of having one or two of these boats that go and pick up these pilots, and thank God that they did, thank God that they're all right, but imagine 100 of those, some of which are surveillance assets, some of which are able to shoot down drones, some of which are able to interdict cruise missiles. Think about the kind of security, unmanned, uncrewed, that we could have in the Strait of Hormuz against the Iranian threat without putting any people in harm's way.
Admiral, thank you for your time. We'll wait to see what shoe drops next in this and who does the dropping.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.